What's up guys, Justin Fuller here, and I'm outside of a 2021 Honda Civic Hatchback Sport. Now, could we argue that this is the best bang for the buck when it comes to the Civic? Possibly, and we're gonna go through that. But let's talk about what it competes with out there on the market, and then how is it different from the 2020? So let's hop on in. Alright guys, so let's talk about what's underneath the hood of this Honda Civic. So as I pull you in, I'll remind you that it is a 1.5 liter turbo engine that is putting out 180 horsepower. Now, as far as gas mileage, you're looking at 29 in the city and 35 on the highway. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stop and throw up a comparison on the screen so you can see some other vehicles that this normally competes against and what does that miles per gallon look like in a comparison. Now, let's toggle through and walk through here and look at a couple things here. So you can see in the back, I've got quite a bit of room, so if you wanna add anything, run wires for amps, subs, add auxiliary lights and things like that, you absolutely can. Of course, my windshield wiper fluids are right here. I've got my reservoir related to my radiator. Coming across, I've got my air box right here. And then on the other side, I've got a fuse box right here, and then easy access to both my battery terminals in case I ever need to jump the car or do anything of that nature. Now, while we're talking about this, I did mention that it's 180 horsepower. So what I'm gonna do secondarily is I'm gonna throw up on the screen a comparison of horsepower to other vehicles out there on the market. So this way you can check it out and kind of see where it stacks up. While I got that up on the screen, I'm just gonna remind you that from the 2020 to the 21, as far as what's under the hood, they're gonna be the exact same. So if you find yourself searching, don't worry about what's underneath the hood. All right, so let's walk you around the car and just talk about some of the exterior features on the car. So the first thing I'm gonna point out as you come in is this 18-inch alloy wheel that the car has on it. So this way you can get a nice view of what's going on there and appreciate that this is a styling and aesthetic, and that's part of what makes the Sport, along with this body side kit that you'll see down below that kind of wraps around to the back end. And then of course you do have the spoiler on top of the vehicle. So let's continue back over here. I will point out that it is body colored door handles, along with body colored your mirrors. So you don't always see that in some of the vehicles. Sometimes you'll see the black, much like this white Accord that's sitting right across the way here. Now, when we get up to the front, I will point out that this car not only has your daytime running lights, your standard beams, and then you do come with fog lights in this vehicle, which is kind of cool because in the past, you didn't always see that. Now, as we rack around, you can see that the grille has been smoked or blacked out, which I do like. I think it gives it a nice look to the car as far as contrast. Now, as we move up on the car, I'll point out a couple things here. One, you'll see a trapezoid cut out of the glass up there, and that's gonna be related to Honda sensing, and that's where that camera is. And then down below in the car, you're actually gonna have a radar system that's down here. So I'll talk about those here shortly. So let's continue to wrap around the side of the car. We mentioned the mirrors earlier. I will point out that they're breakaway mirrors, meaning that I can push them and pull them, and I don't have to worry about them going anywhere. All right, guys, so here we are at the back of the vehicle, and I wanna talk to you about it. So first off, I want to point out the exhaust system. I love the way they've set up this exhaust. It's just a really cool look. I like that it's centered, and of course, it's a dual setup look. So definitely a sporty vibe and feel to this car. Now, as you're looking at here, you have the wraparound brake lights, of course, with your reverse lights there. The car is, of course, badge. And then you not only have one spoiler with your brake light underneath, but then you have a secondary spoiler up top too. So from the back end of this vehicle, it is a sporty looking vehicle. So if that's the aesthetic you're going for, the Civic Sport Hatchback makes a lot of sense. All right, so the first thing I want to point out is that this tailgate actually angles quite a bit up. So it gives you a lot of access into your cargo space area. So the first thing you'll notice here is it does come with carpeted floor mats. So I'm gonna get those out of the way for a minute. And then let's talk about this. So first off, I want to point out that you do have a 60-40 split here, meaning that I can fold down one separate of the other. So it's nice that you have that option available to you. And then you do have a setup. So if you do have children, you can set up a car seat. You've got your tethers and anchors in all those areas. So let me pop this up and show you right here. So you can see that you have your jack, your accessories, and your spare. Your spare is full height, just not full width. So be aware of that. And then, of course, I'm going to talk about this funnel here in a second because it's one of my favorite things. You may be asking yourself, Justin, can you play jazz music on this sweet little trumpet? And the answer would be absolutely not. But in 6th grade, I was decent at it. Fun fact. But let's talk about what this is really for. So as I pull you in here, I want to point out first that this is connected to the door locks, which is really cool. So if it's unlocked, I can just press and it pops automatically open for me. Now, I will point out that this is capless, meaning that there's no cap that has to sit on it. So you never have to worry about not tightening it up and then setting off the check engine light in the car. Cool feature. But where this comes into play is if I ran out of gas, I would need to be able to hold this valve open so that I could pour gas into it, right? that's where this funnel comes into play. I can hold it open and then be able to pour gas into it. So hopefully you never run out of gas, but on the off chance that you do, know that you have it. All right, so before we leave the back end of the car, I want to throw up, of course, a comparison so that you can compare not only this vehicle, but to other vehicles out there in the market as far as cargo space goes. So if you're looking at other hatchbacks out there, maybe you want to know, how does it stack up? So let's take a look at that on the screen, and then we will jump into the next category. All right, guys, so here I am in the second row, and you can see it's a little bit tighter fit, but I'm not touching up there. I got some space. So let's bring you on in. But first, I want to point out some legroom back here. So I have this pushback for me, and I'm a 6-footer. So you can imagine that if you were 6'2", 6'3", this might get a little bit tight at the knees, but I still have space being a 6-footer behind a 6-footer. So come on in, I want to show you a couple things. The first being that you have a cloth leather mix as far as the interior goes. So you'll see the leather kind of running down the center, and then cloth, and then leather again. So I like that they've done it. It gives it kind of a sporty feel to it, but it's also just functional, right? Where elbows and hands are always going to be, much like here, you don't have to worry about dirt and dust sticking to it as much because it is a different material. Now, you do have some speakers back here, so I will remind you that you have a 180-watt 8-speaker system in this vehicle. The same thing you would find above it too, so you don't have to worry about losing out anything or gaining anything if you're climbing up a model. So as far as cubby space, you do have a little bit of space down here, and then of course on the other door you've got some space right here. You won't find those pockets right here or right here. I want to say you're gonna have to climb models for that, and of course because of the size of this vehicle, you're not gonna find AC vents back here, which is a little bit of a bummer, but I understand. And you don't have the USBs back here, so just something to be aware of if you're comparing this to other vehicles out there on the market. Now, with that said, let's talk about second row legroom. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna throw up a comparison so that you can see not only the Honda, but I want you to see the other vehicles out there in the market so you can understand, hey, how does it compare in the second row as far as legroom goes? If I'm gonna have passengers back there, I wanna know. So take a look at that on the screen and then we'll head into the next thing. All right, so as we head into the front row, I wanna point out a couple things. First, that you'll notice this is a manual adjustment. If you're looking for that powered seat, you're gonna wanna climb models up to that EX or above trim levels. I also wanna point out that you do have the aluminum sport pedals down below, so continuing with that sporty feel and look, you do have that in this vehicle. Now, pointing out other things, you do have a leather wrap steering wheel along with shifter, and then you do have leather across here. And as I mentioned in the seats, they always have that sporty vibe. You've got the leather down the sides, cloth in the center. They do have the checkered run right here that you can see in gray. And then of course the stitching in the alternate color, right, to offset it. So a good looking interior as far as the vehicle goes. All right, guys, so let's talk about the dash layout and some of the different buttons that you're gonna see as you work your way across it. So I'm gonna start you on the left side over here and talk about a couple buttons. So the first couple of buttons I wanna talk about are related to Honda sensing. So right here, you can see this. If I have the LED on, which you can see I'm catching a little sunlight, what this is gonna be part of my road departure mitigation system. Meaning that when this is on, it's gonna detect the shoulder of the road. So if I start to drift off the shoulder, whatever side it may be on, it'll give me an audible alert, and then it'll actually vibrate the wheel to say, hey, wake up, pay attention, to make sure you're doing what you should be. Now, above that is my collision mitigation braking system. And you can also turn this feature on and off, but it's always on when you start the car. That's the default, right? Now, what collision mitigation braking is if it's looking like I'm gonna hit another car, what it's gonna do is give me an audible alert, and then it's gonna flash in the dash, and then it'll actually start to apply the brakes to help prevent the accident. Now, the technology that it's using is the radar that's down in the grille, and then of course you have this camera up here, right? So these two are gonna play a role in that feature. Now, as we move over to this third button over here, I wanna talk about vehicle stability assist. So this works with your traction control. So in the event that you go into a skid, what it's gonna do is transfer power to whichever wheel is getting better traction and help correct for that skid. So this is always on and running also, right? So if you wanna turn one of these off, you kinda have to press and hold, right? And then it'll alert you up here. And for this one, you're gonna have to press and hold a little bit longer. They don't want you to accidentally bump it, and then it'll let you know that it's turned off, right? So I'm gonna turn that back on. All right, so let's talk about the steering wheel. So on the left side of the steering wheel is gonna have your volume controls, your Bluetooth, and then operating your menu screen. So volume controls, very easy to understand right here. Bluetooth to answer a call, hang up, and use voice command. This will also play a role for Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which I'll go over here in a second. And then this button right here is when I'm touching this, it's gonna allow me to toggle through this menu screen as you can see up here, right? So you can see kind of what I'm doing. So let's hop into this menu screen and talk about it. All right, so here we are on this menu screen, and I just want to walk you through a few things. The first being, of course, the audio, because that's probably going to be the most commonly used thing. So I'm going to turn my audio on here, and let's make sure it's not blaring. But you can see that it immediately turns on, and it's showing me what I'm listening to. Now, I have the ability to press the up and down buttons to toggle through any options I have available, right? So I'm just seeing FM and AM right now because I don't have anything connected via Bluetooth or USB or anything of that nature, and I don't have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto running. So it's going to toggle through, and it's just kind of nice that you can do that using the up and down arrow right here. So let's keep on moving through that. screen there. So the next one is gonna be related to Bluetooth. I'd be able to pull this up and access, my contacts and different things of that nature, so easy to understand. Following that, if you wanna switch from miles per hour to kilometers an hour, you can do that right here. And then of course, I can jump over to my fuel consumption, right? So this is gonna be range, how many miles I'm on this tank of gas, my average fuel consumption. Obviously, I'm just moving around the lot right now, so I'm not killing it on the MPGs. And you can see this bar graph that'll keep moving while you're driving, and that's gonna be your instantaneous gas mileage, meaning at any point, if you're looking at that, the way you're driving, if you held that style of driving, the way you're doing it, you would get roughly that amount of gas mileage, right? So that'll kind of give you an instantaneous. Now, moving past that, this can be related to the turbo as far as torque management and things of that nature. So that's what you're seeing here in case you're interested. And then of course, moving one over, I can get to things like my oil life, right? When I get down to 15%, it'll give me an audible alert. It'll actually throw a code up on there and you'll see A1 or A2 or B1 or B2. At any point, you can look that up on Google or you can refer to your manual and it'll tell you exactly what they're gonna recommend you when you come in for get your service. Now, moving past that, you come back to your audio, right? So easy enough to understand this, and then I can, of course, toggle through the different menu options right here. Now, let's move over to the right side real quick. So over here is where you're gonna find some additional Honda sensing features. Now, there's two of them here that relate to each other, right? So the first thing I'd wanna do is hit this main button. And when I do that, you're gonna see ACC and LKS come on. So you can see them flashing up there. Now, that stands for Adaptive Cruise Control and Lane Keep Assist. So let's talk about Lane Keep Assist first, and that's gonna play on this button right here. So if I press that button, you're gonna see some dotted lines there. Now, what's happening when I'm doing that is I've now activated this feature, and it's using the camera that I mentioned that's up here in the window to detect the lines out on the road. So what this is designed to do is if I drift a little bit to the left or the right in my lane, and I start to drift out of my lane, it'll center and keep me centered. So it'll actually control the steering wheel a little bit. So it's like if you've ever been in a car that has a little bit of a pull to the left or the right, that's what this feature is gonna be like. Now, if you're one of those people who doesn't typically use your blinker, this may not be the feature for you. You might wanna turn this off. But I would encourage you, use your blinker. So next feature is gonna be Adaptive Cruise Control. Now, if you just want classic cruise control, you can absolutely do it. All you gotta do is press and hold, and it'll say cruise mode selected. Now using classic cruise control. But if you want the adaptive feature, and let me explain what that is. Adaptive cruise control means I can get up to my speed and I press set just like I normally would, right? And then where it says ACC off, you would see my speed right there. Now, as I'm going down the road, I can select the distance it'll keep between me and the car in front of me using this. So you'll see these boxes up here. The more boxes, the more space it's gonna keep between me and the car in front of me. Now, how it does that is it uses that radar that's down in the front end of the car to bounce it off the car in front of you. So it's now determining the space. So if I have it set to 65 and a car in front of me slows down, my car will slow down to keep that generated spacing that I have determined, right? And then when I get out from behind them, it'll take me back up to my speed. So this is an awesome feature if you're on like a long road trip or if you just have a long commute every day. So something to be aware of. It's part of the Honda sensing package. Now, you do have paddle shifters on this car. It is a sport, so they're giving you a little bit more control over the performance. So whether I want to upshift or whether I want to downshift, that's going to play a role. This is a CVT transmission, so you don't have necessarily 6 set gears or anything like that, but it is set to ratios. So that's where this is going to come into play for you. Now, over here on the left, I will point out that you do have your lighting system. I can set them to auto, which is always good to know, and then my fog light controls. And then on the right side, I have my windshield wiper controls and my windshield wiper on the back of this vehicle. So nice to know that you have that. All right, guys, so let's talk about the touchscreen of this vehicle. So the first thing I want to remind you about the touchscreen is if you're looking for tips and tricks and different ways to customize stuff on this, I've actually got a whole video with different tips and tricks on it that I will put right up here on the screen. So just be aware of that. So let's hop in and talk about a couple things. The first thing I want to talk about is, of course, audio. So hey, I want to pick out a different source other than the FM radio, right? I don't know who's listening to FM and AM anymore, but there's a couple people out there, right? You've got FM, AM. You can, of course, connect up to the USB, which I've done with my phone currently, but you could do a thumb drive up there and add music to it. You do have Bluetooth audio, right? So you can connect up anything that would connect up via Bluetooth. It is Pandora compatible. Don't worry, if you're a Spotify user, you can always go through Bluetooth, or you can use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, which is the next feature you'll see right there. I particularly use a Google phone, so this is gonna be Android Auto for me. So we're gonna jump into Android Auto in just a second, but let's talk about a couple other things here on the screen. So the info button is gonna pull up like your tripometer information, give you some of that additional info that you can get right here. So if you wanted it here versus over on the screen, you could absolutely get that. So I'm gonna jump back out of that. Some of those other things that you can see on the screen, just so you know what they are. System device information, clock and wallpaper. So clock and wallpaper is, you know, I can just throw a general image up there and I can change this or I can customize it, which is in that tips and tricks video if you want to know how to do that. On top of that, if you want to change this entire skin up, also in that tips and tricks video. So might be worth taking a look at if you're really thinking about getting this car and you like to play and customize, right? So Honda Link right here is set up to where anytime you connect with the phone, it's going to prompt you and say, hey, would you like to enable Honda Link? And what it's prompting you for is in the event that airbags deploy in the car, they can call you. If you don't answer, they can then call and send out EMS to you, basing it off of your year, make, model, color, and VIN, and then the last GPS location of the vehicle, right? So super cool feature, 100% free. Now, as you climb into the higher trims, depending on what you ultimately decide on in a Honda, you do have access to things like being able to start your car from the phone or control the door locks, but you're not typically going to find that in something like a sport model, right? You're going to have to be up in your touring models. So phone-wise, I'd be able to jump into here and then obviously have access to any of my my phone book and anything of that nature. I can add 20 presets here. If you're adding the presets over on the steering wheel where you saw the voice command button I mentioned earlier, you'll be able to press that and just say calls Dave, right? Now, if you press and hold the voice command button over there, you can absolutely wait for Siri or for Google and then ask them to do something. I prefer to use those just because I feel like the voice command system works better for calling anybody that I would want. Now, moving away from that, the settings in the vehicle, there's plenty of stuff you could go in here and mess with, but I'm just gonna show you a couple just because they're probably, you know, if you just got the car, these would be the most important. So it's gonna be under door and window right here. So this is how to control the door locks of the vehicle. So right now it's set up to where when you hit 10 miles an hour, it'll automatically lock the doors. So maybe you wanna change that to when you shift to park or turn it completely off depending on what your situation is. If you have kids, dogs, you know, that kind of thing, it may play a role into how you control the door locks. Now, when you're getting out of the car, the way it's set up is when I open my driver's side door, it then opens the remaining doors of the car. Now, I'm not a huge fan of that because if the driver's sitting there and they're kind of getting their stuff together, the person and the people in the back are all fiddling with the door trying to get it open because they're, you know, they're waiting, it's not unlocked, right? So I kind of like personally changing this, but know that you have options available to you right here. Now, lastly, I want to scroll down here. The very last one is probably my most favorite feature, the walkaway auto lock. So any of my vehicles that have smart key entry. And while I'm talking about that smart key entry, you gotta have the key fob to have it, right? So on the key fob, I have remote start, right? So if I want to do that, press lock. You gotta make sure it's locked, and you can press and hold this and it'll start and run for 10 minutes. You wanna do that same sequence again, it'll run for an additional 10 minutes. Or if you wanted to turn the car off, you press the unlock and the remote start button, and that would turn the car off. So in case you started it and then went, I'm gonna get caught up doing something, I might as well, right? Now this button, don't be confused, it's not a powered tailgate. This is simply to unlock the tailgate in the back of the vehicle, or I should say the hatch, right? And then if I want to set this off, I can do the alarm. Now, know that you have a key back here. Not a lot of people know that. It lives in there. There's a little switch you can pop. So if you ever killed the battery, you could still get inside of the vehicle to get your belongings out. And there's a couple other places that you can use this depending on what kind of Civic you're in, and I go over that in my tips and tricks video too. Hey, what do you know? So while we're talking about that, walkaway auto lock. So in the event that I got out of the car, walked halfway into the grocery store and went, oh my God, I left my laptop in the front seat. I gotta go back out there. I'm not even gonna be able to finish shopping because I can't focus, right? Well, if I had turned the walkaway auto lock feature on and hit yes right here, what that means is if I got out of the car, I had my key with me, the minute I get 10 feet from the car, it will automatically lock the doors for me. So if I forget to lock them or my hands are full or whatever, it'll take care of it for me. So really cool feature, walkaway auto lock. Now, if you wanna know how to get back to those, just in case you watch this and said, oh, okay, Justin, maybe I'm into these, go to settings. Once you come under settings, you wanna go to vehicle. Now, once you're under vehicle, door and window, all these are right here. So those two that I talked about earlier and the walkaway auto lock features at the very bottom. So those are my three kind of big hits as far as the settings go. Now, Android Auto is probably one of the primary features that a lot of people like about the touchscreens in the Hondas because you're finding that it lands in all of them along with Apple CarPlay, right? So for Android Auto users, you're gonna pull this up, you're gonna see this screen, right? So I've got access to Google Maps, Waze. If you're an Apple Map user, you could use Apple Maps, or you could use Waze or Google Maps. So know that you have a lot of different options for you, or you could go a different route and go like TomTom or somebody if you want their GPS system. While we're talking about apps, I'm gonna take a second to throw 15 of the most common or most popular apps that you would see on Apple CarPlay or Android up on the screen. So that way you can kind of take a look at them because I don't necessarily use all of them. I'm a more basic functioning person when it comes to this, but you know, hey, either you're vanilla or maybe you got 30 million apps that you like to toggle through and play with. So now that we've seen that on the screen, of course, Spotify users, like I mentioned earlier, you can have that. Pandora also, you can have it pulled up here. And then I can access things like my Messenger, right? I can scroll through here. I can get to the settings and I can change this background here, which I'll show you in 1 second. But I just want to point out that I can even get to Teams. I can get to YouTube Music. I can pull up weather. If you're a podcast listener, there's plenty of different options for you. But I do want to show you one thing. If you go to the settings, there are some different options for this in here. You can choose to show the weather, or you can change the wallpaper, also in my tips and tricks video. So if I wanted to change it to something else, maybe I like this dusk one right here, Awesome. What a cool look that it has to it, right? So just know that you have these features available to you. When I pull up my mapping system, it can search. I can use the voice commands to ask it to search and run searches for me, or I could press and hold the search button until I hear the beep for Apple CarPlay or Android Auto and just ask it to, directions to such and such, and it'll take over and start it for me. So you can see the last places I went, it was REI and then it was Maximum 3 Fitness, so shout out to them. They're getting me back in shape. So as we move along, let's talk about what's down below it. So if you can see right here, I can pull up my climate button. This is one of the few things I don't care for in a lot of the cars. However, this one does have an advantage over the EX above it. Wow. You would normally have to hit this and then you would choose, okay, I want this much air and this is where I want it to go and that sort of thing. Now, I like about this car is that it's not dual zoned, meaning that I would be controlling left and right separate of each other, which is good in the sense that I could get in the car, immediately crank this up and start cooling the car off. I don't have to wait for the screen to load, right? Although it may not turn the AC on, it may just turn the fan on, but be aware that you also have remote start so you can turn it on and cool it off for yourself. So you can see that I have my phone sitting here and it's running down in here and it's got this kind of holder that'll kind of keep your wires down there. So I could flip my phone around and kind of tuck it away in here. And that way I don't have a bunch of wires and everything running around this. But I just want to talk about the general features and buttons that you see right here real quick. So as you toggle through these, you got the LED to throw you through, and I'll show you the backup camera in here in just a second. So sport mode, drive, neutral, reverse, and then park. Sport mode is just going to rev at a higher RPM, give me a little bit more get up and go, but I'm going to give up some of that gas mileage. So if you're looking for that 29 in the city and then you're looking for the 35 on the highway or the combined of 32, you're probably not going to want to use this as often, right? Now, the other 3 buttons are kind of important and not a lot of people know that much about them. So the Econ button right here, if you can see this in the corner here, whenever I hit that, it's going to turn on a green leaf, and this is kind of the opposite of sport mode. So when I have this engaged, it's going to give me better gas mileage, but I'm going to give up some of the acceleration off the pedal down here, and it's going to affect the AC unit, so I'm not getting as much air coming to me, right? So just kind of a difference of these 2 options. Now, the parking brake's electronic, so all I got to do is set it, is put my foot on the brake and lift up, and it'll set it, and then press down to release it. Just make sure your foot's on the brake when you're doing it. Now, brake hold is probably one of the most commonly asked about questions because just not a lot of people know what the button does. So if I turn this button on, I will show you. All right, so I've engaged the brake hold button and you're gonna see it say brake hold in green lettering right back up here. So it's kind of a cool feature and I'll show you how it works. So if I have the car in drive, you're gonna see immediately it pops up and it says hold. What that means is I can now release my foot from the brake while the car's in drive and we're not gonna move forward. Now, the minute I touch the gas, it's gonna, let off the brake and allow me to move forward. But then when I come to a complete stop again, the brake hold button will pop back on. I can now release my foot while the car's in drive. All right, guys, so let's take a second to talk about the backup camera in this vehicle. So the first thing I want to do is it's on a 7-inch display screen, so I've got a nice, clear, crisp view. And even with sun hitting this, I always want to point that out, so that you can see the touchscreen, right? So even if I'm switching around to other stuff, it doesn't create so much glare that I can't use it. So I always like to point that out because that is a point of contention depending on the car that you're in, right? Now, when it comes to this, it does have dynamic guidelines, meaning I can cut the wheel and it'll cut with me. And you do have 3 views that are down here. So I've got a wide angle, I've got just a standard view, and then one aimed straight down. So a perfect example of how to use this is you can see this Jeep that's behind me, right? So I'm gonna back up to this Jeep so that you can kind of understand how this works, right? So as I get closer and closer and closer, that is where this may play a role to where I can switch over and start to see, hey, where is this Jeep really at in relation to me, right? Because this is gonna be about 6 inches from your car, so I can start to see where this vehicle is. So it just makes a lot of sense when I'm backing up to have these 3 different views, and it's just super helpful as far as making sure that you're being safe. There's not something sitting behind you like a bicycle, a bag, a dog, a kid, anything like that. So when it comes to safety in the car, you have all those additional features, and you have this. All right, guys, so that is the quick and dirty rundown to the Honda Civic Sport Hatchback. Now, arguably, I'd say it's probably one of the best looking cars that you can get for the amount of money that you're spending when it comes to Hondas, and then specifically Civics. But let's review and talk about what we've already gone over. So the first thing I want to do is throw up a horsepower comparison. So if you're comparing this car and the 180 horsepower that it gets to other vehicles on the market, you can see up on the screen there that, of course, this is where it stacks up and lives. Now, with those same vehicles, let's talk about miles per gallon. So this car gets 29 in the city and it gets 35 on the highway. Combined, that equals 32 miles per gallon. So I'm gonna throw the comparison up on the screen for that also, so that you can really understand how does this car stack up when it comes to gas savings. Now, after we've looked at that, of course, we need to talk about cargo space, because if you're getting a hatchback, chances are you're probably getting it for a reason. Either you're a very active person, maybe you're in a band, maybe you just load up stuff, maybe it relates to your profession, and you need that cargo space in the back. So Either that or you just like that it's a very sporty look. So I'm gonna throw up that cargo space comparison so that you can see the other vehicles that are out there in the market and how it stacks up. Now that we talked about that, you wanna move into the second row of this vehicle. Now, of course, I wanna talk about a comparison there, right? Because if you're gonna have your friends in your car and you're gonna be going places because you get the best gas mileage out of your friends and you have the most cargo space for when you wanna go somewhere, chances are you're gonna end up driving, right? You're not the guy in the little two-seater car that doesn't have any cargo space. So with this vehicle, the second row, I'm gonna throw up the comparison there so that you can see, hey, how does this stack up against other vehicles out there in the market? Now, lastly, I just want to talk about this car in general in comparison to 20 and 21. Not a whole lot of changes here, right? So if you're looking at this vehicle and you can find a 2020, maybe you want to save a little money and go that way, but there's not big, massive changes that you're going to see in the vehicle. So just be aware it's not a big major body style change or anything like that. So you're safe when it comes to that matter. It's really just, hey, do I want a little bit newer car and I might have to spend a little bit more money? Or depending on what the incentives are at the time that you want to buy this car, maybe they end up being about the same. You'll just have to ask your local dealership. Outside of that, I do want to ask you for a few favors. One, I hope that you'll subscribe to the channel. Two, leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Do you feel like I missed something? Is there something you wish I would go over? Please let me know. Or just leave a comment. Let you know, maybe you don't like this color shirt. I don't know. Maybe you do. I don't know. You tell me. But I always look forward to your comments. I try to answer any questions you do put out there. So subscribe to the channel. Like it, of course. I hope you hit the like button for me. Leave a comment. And then lastly, I don't know if I got a lastly. Hit the notification button or do something. I don't know. But either way, I want to thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel, like it, blah, 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 all that stuff. And I'll talk to you soon. Later, guys!